Hello and welcome to everyone. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq and Musqueam peoples here in Rimouski. I will begin my presentation by explaining what is a local immigration policy. I will then discuss and explain the methodology. I will then provide summaries of the two case studies which revealed certain success criteria which informs the optimization model that I'll present at the end. Here is a definition of what is a local immigration policy. It is a local program or strategy within a community or a grouping of communities seeking to attract and retain immigrants, those who are born abroad regardless of their current status, in order to respond to a population issue and labor issue. This involves a program with specific objectives to tackle a demographic issue. This translates into a strategy which is operationalized by public tools and programs. But everything first takes place at the local level, whether it be the development and the implementation. At this level, we see municipal and multi-sectoral stakeholders. It is the provincial and federal governments who are responsible for immigration. And there's another key element which includes wider powers in order to achieve local impacts. The federal government is responsible for rolling out new immigration programs out in the regions. One thing that is often left out in the development of these programs is the local capacity in terms of policies. These capacities is very important when determining the success of the strategy. So we can't impose from one day to the next a local community to become welcoming. This is an approach that involves the active participation of local organizations through a series of stakeholders, and this is the basis of my research. I seek to illustrate this aspect. Firstly, what capacity in terms of policies do these local networks reveal? And second, which factors can associate to the performance and efficacy of these networks? I've used a mixed methodology, and I used two case studies that took place in the 2000s. The data is from 34 interviews conducted from key stakeholders in addition to census and socioeconomic data. The theoretic framework is based on the classic political cycle, but at the local level. So we need to identify the issues, analyze the matter, associate the different stakeholders and the public powers, formulate and define the strategy, roll out a program with the right means, act, and then evaluate. All these steps can be traced back, and this is important in order to determine the success in the development of practices. So I've proposed an evaluation tool. So what I've done this here is I regrouped these different items into three main groups. So we've done potential, substantial, and efficacy. I will go back on that a bit later in my presentation. Let's look at these two case studies. So we have these two cities where services are concentrated in specific centers. So you need to offer attractive conditions to immigrants and their families. In both cases, public stakeholders and private stakeholders are tackling the demographic issue, and they decided that the that it is important to make it attractive to immigrants to move to these regions. So if we look at a 10-year program following the development and implementation of a attractive immigration policy. So Franklin was more fruitful in attracting and retaining immigrants, even if the initial strategy was concentrated on the temporary hiring of immigrants. In the case of Rimouski, that it was not successful, but even though that you have a significant university students that come to the city, so we have here a positive result and a negative result. Let's look some descriptive factors. If we look at Brandon, we see there's a key employer that's recruiting temporary employees once local labor is not sufficient. That creates a new flux. So the economic development brings together the different actors in order to attract and retain these individuals. These stakeholders, with the help of the involved employer and trade union, create the necessary integration conditions, even though there was the lack of a federal program. The province, however, accelerates different programs in order to access a permanent status through the provincial candidate program. When we look at Rimouski, we see at the time that employers are quite reluctant to hire immigrants. There was a local immigration policy that was adopted and advertised online. However, it doesn't receive any support from the municipal sector that seeks the higher stakeholders to take part in doing so. And then they came up with a super strategy for the entire region. So the provincial funds are distributed through the 8 territories of the RMC. We see that there's parallel sectorial interests in higher education where stakeholders implement their own strategy to attract foreign students. These individuals do not remain in the community once they've finished their educational stay. When we look at the analysis of data in both cases, I could identify factors contributing to these the situation I mentioned earlier on in my presentation. I know it's a lot of words on a slide, but just to give you the scope of the different aspects that have come up during the research process. These factors are almost correlated positively with each of the results, and that reveals their influence. These factors can be understood in a configurative mode, which means that it's a group of factors that contribute simultaneously to the success criteria. In summary, we can take away that the potential of these networks depends on the comprehension of the issues, the learning of the attractiveness of the networking, and the planning. All from a bottom-top approach. A unified governance appears here as a key factor influencing the success of these processes. When we look at substantial capacity, we can see in the wording of an adequate strategy that involves the stakeholders of all the different levels, including the government, and supported by specific means in terms of resources and programs. A key takeaway here is the constant presence of a leadership transformational to rally the different actors between the different silos. And then if we looked of the efficacy, we can check it by the local commitment from private, public, and community partners. This commitment allows to ensure and coordinate pro-immigrant services. But also, in terms of the implementation, the cultural diversity must be lived both at the employment level, at the public services level, and also in the public place. These results bring me to offer you the following framework in order to optimize the capacity in terms of local immigration policies. Let's look at this tool. If we consider this to be the network of the different stakeholders in order to optimize their different capacities, the following conditions are all necessary in order to be attractive to immigrants. You need municipal authorities that are ready to foster these policies, as well as the coordination among the different networks. And these individuals must have the influence on the stakeholders and be able to be good at networking and planning and analytical, and be present long enough to ensure the development and the implementation of the policy. We also need a formal involvement from employers as soon as the network is rolled out, and also during the development of the strategy. But again, we need their commitment in order to develop HR practices and being open to diversity, which is then translated into the hiring of immigrants. And now the private and public services must be able to reflect the will of being welcoming to immigrants. We'll never highlight sufficiently the importance that first line individuals have in welcoming immigrants. We have to have a collaboration, a multi-level with higher public powers, especially with immigration ministries and the labor ministry. This must be delegated to representatives and result in an environment that reflects this collaboration. And this multi-level collaboration is not something that is late in the development of these capacity, but a permanent condition. This is why here we can see that the different parts of the stool are connected together. If these are all conditions are brought together, we can then confirm that the network strategy and the development of this strategy aligns with the governments and local communities. This model does not guarantee the success because there will always be external factors that are difficult to control. It is why it's a coherent approach, and that is evolutionary, that requires monitoring and the necessary adjustments along the way. To conclude, it is all the environmental conditions are constant. The capacity to attract a community could be optimal within their own context. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to our breakout session discussions. Thank you very much.